Well, is the Bible a trustworthy document? Is the Bible that we have today a reliable historical document? First question is the bibliographical test. What that means is, where do we get the copy that we have in our hands today? And do we know if that agrees with the original? And this test is applied to all kinds of documents, including pagan literature. And you have to look at the time gap between the original autographs and the earliest copies, and then also the number of copies, and then how much do they agree or disagree. And it's fascinating when you look at the other documents of antiquity. For example, Plato's Dialogues. We're dealing with a time gap to the earliest copy that we have of about 1,200 years, and we only have 7 copies. But people don't doubt that text. Homer's Iliad is one of the best, with a 500-year time gap and 643 copies. Then we consider what we have with the New Testament. We have an amazing 100, in some cases 200, but 100 to 200 year time gap. And we have over 5,000 Greek manuscripts alone. And we also have about 19,000 which are in translations to other languages, because the Christians were busily making translations as they spread the word. It's possible then to compare these copies and to see how much they agree. Most authorities give a figure of between 98 and 99.5% agreement, which is quite remarkable. And in those cases where it does differ, there has never been a doctrine the church has ever taught that depends solely on those passages. So we really have all the experts like F.F. Bruce, Bruce Kenyon, Bruce Metzger have all said that with the New Testament we have the most reliable of the ancient documents in our possession. Then of course we can go there and ask what Jesus' attitude about the Old Testament is to get some confirmation there. But even with the Old Testament we have other evidence, because we have, for example, the Greek Septuagint, and we have Dead Sea Scrolls, and we can confirm the degree of accuracy there. Not quite as great, but 95% plus, according to those studies as well. So we have a reliable text. Now, of course, you could have a reliable text of a complete fantasy. That doesn't yet establish that we're talking about historical fact. So then we need to look at internal evidence. What does the document say about itself? And then external evidence. Are there sources outside the Bible that corroborate what it says? The internal evidence would include, for example, the genre. The New Testament clearly reads as historical narrative. C.S. Lewis said that if this was fiction, it would have to be the realistic novel that wasn't invented until the 18th century. There's nothing like it in any of the legends which he ever read. Then we can look at the consistency, and we'll notice that there are different accounts from different points of view, but that they are broadly in agreement. And where there are contrary statements about the number of angels or something like this, they're not logically inconsistent and could be explained simply by a different vantage point or a different time or something like this. Then you have the ring of truth, but unlike propaganda, it doesn't portray the disciples in exclusively good light. We have Peter denying Christ 3 times. We have the odd fact that the risen Lord appears to women whose testimony was not valid in the court of law. Why include that unless that's just the way that it happened? We're also dealing with writers who declare themselves to be eyewitnesses and are confirmed to be such, by the way, by early church fathers such as Irenaeus. With the case of Matthew and John, direct eyewitnesses. Mark interviewed Peter. Luke went back and interviewed various people, including Mary herself. They have no motive to lie. Okay, if they had made this up, then they'd been going around spreading a falsehood which they would realize would very likely lead to their own death. and in fact 11 of the 12 were martyred for proclaiming this same message. So the internal evidence is very strong. We're dealing with history, something that people are repeating because they believe it's true. But that also explains the number of copies. Get the word out. This is really important stuff. External evidence. We have Papias and Irenaeus. These people confirmed the traditional authorship of the Gospels. Papias knew John himself, and Irenaeus was a pupil of Polycarp, who knew John. Then we also have quotation in the church lectionaries that just backs up that we're dealing with original documents here. And we have the non-Christian sources, which I mentioned in the previous question, Josephus, Suetonius, Tacitus, Thales, and so on, who are corroborating that this is historical information. And finally, archaeology. The Pilate inscription shows indeed that Pilate was procurator of Judea. You have the bones of Caiaphas. We're talking about historical individuals. And historians have shown that, for example, the book of Acts, which skeptics thought might have contained legendary material, actually contains historical material, because Paul talks about things that you could only have known if you saw them with your own eyes. So there's a lot of evidence to support the historicity of this information. We have it in reliable form, and it also rings true as historical information.